Hi, y'all. It's Alex, the Best Places social media manager, and you're about to watch me interview Nancy, a Best Places user. In the interview, we discuss her experience living and working in Beaverton, Oregon. Enjoy. Well, then let's get started. Do you just want to tell me your name and talk about where you're currently living a little bit?
Okay. I'm Nancy Wise, and I moved to Oregon 2 years ago. I bought a place in a neighborhood of Beaverton, Oregon. So we're about 12, 13 miles south of Portland, one of the bigger suburbs. Yeah, basically that's it. I bought my place somewhat hastily. I've been looking for a year, and then my first grandchild was born premature, and I wanted to be able to help out my son and his family. So I bought this pretty quickly. Actually, it was brand new when I bought it. I was actually the first owner to move into this little townhouse development. There are 24 units here. It's in a neighborhood called Aloha. Mm-hmm. And the downside of, I'm an avid walker. I walk, 5 miles a day, me and my dog. And the downside of this particular area of Aloha is there are very few sidewalks, which is a little frustrating, actually. But on the upside, there's definitely a lot more that kind of overrides that from a benefit standpoint. We've got nature every day here. I don't know if you've ever been to Oregon, but it's quite a beautiful state. Yeah, it rains a lot, but you know what? It's very, very beautiful too. So. The cold weather is a little bit difficult for me to deal with. And so I'm actually just got another job. So I'll be starting off with working with the production group over at Goodwill here in Hillsboro in a couple of weeks. But, my goal was to be able to get a position like that and be able to, eventually, look in other areas during the colder months or winter months. So, we'll see what happens here, but I'm definitely gonna hang in with, I'm very, very happy about the job. I'll at least be with them, for a couple of years. And then, I'll look around and see if I want to stay in this area or, relocate elsewhere.
Nice. You kind of already touched on this a little bit, but do you want to talk a little bit about how your experience living in Aloha, like what about it inspired you to reach out to us for this interview?
Actually, I really like your site, and I like the data that you guys provide, and the comparisons for different areas and all that. And it's very, very helpful. The reason I decided to reach out was you guys had a podcast recently that was very interesting. And I thought, wow, these guys are really on top of it. It had to do primarily with people, mass exodus from different larger cities and people heading more toward more rural areas. Which there are lots of, throughout the Pacific Northwest as well. I really wanted to share. I mean, there are some wonderful, wonderful things about this area of the United States. The food is fantastic. The farm to table concept of food is just magnificent. There is such a bonding of people who have lived here were born and raised here and lived here for many, many years. They're very, very tight. They take care of each other. And that I love seeing. I was a military kid, so I lived on military bases for the first quarter of my life. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I had that life experience. it's anyway, that's people in Oregon are wonderful. It's also been somewhat difficult for me having been a transplant because they're not very fond of people from California. So I don't really offer that up, very quickly unless I'm specifically asked, there's a lot of building continually going on around here, all throughout this Pacific Northwest, but in this particular area of northern Oregon, there's a lot of building, and so a lot of the open space is being encroached upon by townhouse developments, by developments with single family homes, but I'm very progressive. I like that. I like the progressiveness, and also like the open space and wilderness. I get my nature fix every day when I take walks, so it's fantastic. The resources that are available for people in Oregon is magnificent. They do a very good job of taking, unlike what you see a lot of on TV. We really had our share here. I was here not quite a year when COVID hit, and it was like for everybody quite a struggle. But we're all coming out of it now. So anyway, I decided to reach out to you guys just to give my feedback from my chapter of life. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'm over 50. I semi-retired from healthcare administration in Southern California after almost 30 years. But I'm one of those people that will probably never stop working, as long as I'm healthy, which I am, thank God. I'll continue working. I get to watch my granddaughter every Friday, which is nice. She's 20 months old and thriving, doing very well. I mean, the cost of one of the things, I went on the Sperling, to do cost. I did quite an analysis before I ever moved here, but my son had already been here for 5 years. He relocated from California to here almost 5 years ago. So I've been here a lot visiting. But I just did cost of living analysis, and I was I sold my place in Southern California in 2018 in anticipation of leaving within 2 years. But that was kind of advanced because of changes that happened within the health system, and it was definitely time for me to semi-retire. I did quite an analysis and really utilized that Sperling data that you guys do, and comparing Redondo Beach which is where I was, to here was significantly less expensive here, but it's still expensive in Oregon, to be honest with you. I really wanted to be in Washington, and that's where I looked. But then when I found out I was going to have a grandchild, I kind of narrowed it down to this area of Oregon because this is where they are. They're in their own place now in Sherwood, Oregon, but I still really have a desire at some point to be in Washington. Yeah, somewhere around a body of water. So somewhere around the Columbia River or the Willamette. So yeah, I'm just breathtaking views here and all throughout. I've done a lot of traveling over the last 2 years looking for places to buy until I finally bought this place. And yeah, I've been in some pretty amazing areas that I just have to stop and take a deep breath and say, this is magnificent. So yeah, that's why I reached out to you guys, so I could offer my 2 cents.
Lovely. Well, you mentioned growing up on military bases and coming from California. What do you think your biggest move was, just like in terms of culture shock, but also potentially in terms of distance?
You mean throughout my life?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it would have been, it would not have impacted me from the standpoint of what we look at, you and I look at regarding culture shock, which is, pretty much something that, I don't know at what age, but it probably preteen or something when that would really be an emphasis. But I was about a year old when my father was an officer in the Air Force, and we moved to Rabat, North Africa.
Wow.
And we lived in North Africa on a military compound, Rabat, actually, for about 5 years. And my mother was in her glory, because my mom was French, born and raised in France, and their secondary language was French, it's Arabic and French. And then we went from there to Spain, went from Spain to Greenland, Labrador, actually, for less than a year. And then we came back stateside. So I've moved a lot.
Wow.
I went to, from the time I began school at a Montessori, actually, school in North Africa. From the time I began school until I graduated from high school, I've been to, I think I counted eight different schools or 9 different schools, something like that. I went to 4 different high schools. Yeah. And that was after Dad retired from the military.
Wow.
Yeah. Moving is in my genes. One thing that military people talk about a lot, military brats, the kids talk about having the moving gene. And that was definitely, I think the longest place I've stayed was my Southern California place that I sold, which was 12 years. So, yay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I lived in Southern California for 38 years. And there was some culture shock moving even from California to here. I mean, my whole network of friends is there. And it's been very difficult making friends here because it's with that, what I was speaking about earlier, the wonderful sense of duty that people have to one another here to take care of each other, which was truly very, very evident during these awful fires that we had. On the flip side, for a person coming into that picture that is not from here, it can be very lonely. You can feel very excluded, because it's anyway, it's a little difficult. Fortunately, I connected with a church. That was one of the first things I did when I got here. Connected with a church. Church is very important to me. And I am still with the same church here in Beaverton Christian Church. They're wonderful, great mission program. They do a lot of wonderful things in the community. They hold a compassion clinic every year where they reach out to various medical and dental providers. And they offer services to people that wouldn't otherwise be able to access, that level of service, which is fantastic. They do a lot for families. They are very active in the foster care program throughout the state. They do a lot of good. So fortunately, I have that. And that's really actually the 3 virtual Bible studies that I did during the period when, from March of 2020 all the way through January of this year, was like a lifeboat for me. It was very helpful. So, yeah.
Wonderful. That's good to hear. So you talking about culture shock and all that. Maybe we've already talked about it, but do you have any advice for people that would be making a similar move?
Yes, I would say, first of all, to do their research on your site. Definitely do the research. And based on what criteria they have for the type, for everything having to do with their lifestyle, make sure and search that out. Um, check out neighborhoods specifically. Um, go on the DOJ site. my Obviously there's some law enforcement in our background. My father was provost marshal of Vandenberg Air Force Base, and so it's been a big, security has been an important thing in my life, from the time I was very young. But yeah, just do the research. There are many wonderful areas throughout the Pacific Northwest to live. Some of my favorites are actually in Beaverton is definitely on the one of the about the top 10, I'd say, on the list. Camas, Washington, parts of Vancouver. They need to be very careful, but they can look out throughout Vancouver. Yeah, Camas, Washington, Battleground, Washington. Yeah, and various cities within Oregon. Tigard, McMinnville. They have great wine in Oregon. Some of the best Pinot, in my opinion, in the that I've ever tasted. Yeah. So suggestions: just make sure and do adequate research based on your family's needs, based on school system. West Lynn happens to have an outstanding school system here in Northern Oregon, as well as Beaverton. Beaverton has an outstanding school system. Sherwood, Oregon, but they need to do their research now. And then I would suggest renting when they get here, in areas that they kind of fine tune what areas that are interesting to them. Yeah, I strongly suggest before buying to rent and just get a feel for the community. Yeah.
Wonderful. And you also already kind of said this, but would you recommend Aloha or Beaverton to anyone else? Like, would you recommend they move there?
Well, let me just put it this way. From the standpoint of the people and some of the other things I mentioned, the food, access to other areas, I would say yes. Depending on what we know, the three most important things about real estate are location, ditto, ditto. I would not suggest based on my own criteria. Lack of, when you have a family, you want a little more, you want closer access, you want sidewalks for safety, especially small children that are obviously going to be supervised by their parents, hopefully. Oftentimes that's not the case around here. It is in our development, but in the greater area around here, I don't see a lot of that. And maybe I wouldn't, because I don't have smaller children. My granddaughter, doesn't actually live here anymore. So with my son and his family. So yeah.
All right.
I'd say do the research.
Okay.
By zip code. I had a massive zip code list that I put together. And anytime something would come up on Zillow or any of the other real estate sites, that's the first thing I looked at was the zip code, because I'd already done a ton of research. and not just research, but actually talked with a lot of people and got advice from people. And yeah, so, and don't be hasty like I was, but that's okay because it was a good investment anyway. Yeah, that's about it.
Great. Well, that was basically all the questions I had for you today. Thank you so much. Before we sign off, is there anything else you would want to share with the viewers?
Not really. Enjoy life. You definitely, if weather is inclement weather is not an issue for people. It is with me for various reasons, but the cold weather, I would say go for it. Definitely, it's a fantastic area. I mean, this whole Pacific Northwest is just fabulous for raising a family. A lot outdoor activities, the free activities, the hiking, it's just remarkable.
Wonderful. Hope you enjoyed that interview. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell so you know when we upload new videos. You can also follow us on social to keep up with the team and what we're doing. All of that will be plugged in the description. Leave a comment below telling us what you thought of the interview. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.